Hi there everybody and welcome back to another stock analysis video. Today we are going to be analyzing the second company that actually has earnings, guys, after hours, and that is none other than Activision Blizzard. This is now the third time I've actually analyzed this company, but I actually have my reasons to do it a third time because, well guys, Microsoft is still looking to actually buy Activision for $69 billion. Now, this announcement was done earlier this year, but a purchase this big, guys, is really taking a sweet time because, well, there's a lot of headwinds with other countries. As you guys can see right here, Microsoft's $69 billion Activision takeover faces competition probe in the UK. So they're facing some legal issues, but I think that this will go through eventually, and I don't think that pretty soon we'll be able to even analyze Activision anymore because they'll just be part of Microsoft. So with that said, guys, let's get started with this analysis. So now let's actually come over here to the dividend summary. ATVI, guys, does actually have a dividend, a tiny one, but it's still fairly good, of 0.59% when it comes to their yield, which ends up being 47 cents per share for an annual payout of, well, 47 cents. So they pay their dividends once a year apparently. Payout ratio is 14.42%, really good, but that's kind of obvious seeing that they only pay 47 cents per share. The 5-year CAGR is also pretty good at 9.39%. However, their dividend growth has been 0 consecutive years. Which, if we actually take a look at all of their dividend history, guys, we can see that the reason why this is the case is because, well, in 2021 as well as this year, they had no increase at all. So it's not that they cut it, it is only that they just haven't increased it since last year. Now, ex-dividend date passed as of April 13th, payout date was May 6th, and of course, as I said, they pay their dividends quarterly. Now coming over here to the calculator, we got the ticker symbol of ATVI, market cap of almost $63 billion, PE of 25.33, so a little bit high with a current share price of almost $80. Guys, the fact that this PE is at 25.33 and it's at 79.95, you know, it kind of, I don't necessarily know how to take this because this company was a lot higher last year, right? But now it's fallen, yet it's still, according to their PE, it is still not a buy. But then again, Microsoft is planning to buy this company for $69 billion. So seeing that the market cap is $62.5 billion, if you actually buy this company right now, well, you're essentially buying this company for eventually Microsoft to buy this company at $69, and therefore you get that difference of $7 billion or so. Obviously, that difference isn't $7 billion, it's $7 billion divided by the total common shares outstanding, but nonetheless, you are still getting that gain of that difference of around $7 billion for buying this company at $79.95. And now looking at this annual dividends per share of 47 cents, we actually see that in accordance to the numbers of shares outstanding, they only pay out $367 million, and their 5-year average free cash flow, they're still left with $1.6 billion, and their last year's free cash flow, they're left with almost $2 billion. These payout ratios come out to be 15.74% for last year's free cash flow and 18.48% for the 5-year average free cash flow. So really good, guys. They're not overpaying at all for this dividend, right? They are comfortably paying out this dividend really nicely. And now let's come over here to some fundamentals, starting of course with the net income of 5 years ago, guys, of $273 million to 1 year ago, guys, of almost $2.7 billion, increase of 889%. That is absolutely massive. And well, you can see some funky stuff going on here, right? First of all, massive jump from 5 to 4 years ago, then a decrease from 4 to 3 years ago, and then consistently increasing ever since. Obviously, if Microsoft buys this company, you no longer have to worry about any of this, but let's just say that the deal doesn't go through. This is now something that you have to worry about. So I don't necessarily know why they did a massive jump from 5 to 4 years ago and then a decrease from 4 to 3 years ago. Look this up, guys, figure out what happened here, and if it's not that big of a deal, then you might actually consider this a pretty good metric. Now, for my personal grade on this, I'm actually going to go at around like 75%. mainly because of the fact that this was a huge jump, and I don't know what caused this decrease, and even I don't know what caused this jump either. And I think 75%, just about average, is a fairly decent grade for this company. Now taking a look at the free cash flow, the most important metric of all profit metrics, because of the fact that cash flow, it is what companies use to pretty much pay for everything, right? They use this to pay down their debts, buy back shares, issue a dividend, which they do issue a dividend, and make acquisitions and overall grow the company. So it's really important, guys, for this number to be positive and of course to be increasing. As you can see right here, I don't know where to actually put this, because from 5 years ago, they were at $2.05 billion to 1 year ago of $2.33 billion. That is an increase of 13%, with a 5-year average of almost $2 billion. Now, this is looking fairly good, but take a look at this massive drop from 5 years ago to 4 years ago, a drop of around $400 million or so. And then from 4 years ago to 3 years ago, they did increase, but it wasn't that big of an increase, right? And then from 3 years ago to 2 years ago, this is actually explainable because of the fact that COVID hit and Activision being video games, right? People were staying at home playing video games. So this is actually understandable. What isn't though is from 5 to 4 years ago and then from 4 to 3 years ago. Again, something to do more research on. Remember, free cash flow is cash from operations less your capital expenditures. Figure out what caused the capital expenditures or even the cash from operations to go up or down respectively, and if it's not a big deal, then this might actually be fairly good. So unfortunately, when it comes to this grade that I'm actually going to give this, it is positive, sure, but it's not consistently increasing, and we did see a drop. So for that case, guys, I'm actually going to give it a 70%, a little bit less than average in my personal opinion. And now, guys, looking at the revenue 5 years ago of $7 billion to 1 year ago of $8.8 billion, increase of almost 25.5%, and looking really, really good, right? Consistently increased, except for 3 years ago. Again, we're noticing that definitely something happened 3 years ago that made everything just go down. And the revenue here shows it. So unfortunately, I don't necessarily know what caused this. Figure out what this was, guys. But if you actually just take a look at this, they did do a nice rebound the following year, of course, during COVID. As I said, people were staying at home playing video games, and even last year, they still went up a decent amount as well. Therefore, guys, I'm actually going to give this a little bit higher, probably at around, like, again, a 75%, just because this outlier doesn't seem to be too bad when it comes to their revenue. And now let's take a look at the total assets minus the total liabilities. Let's figure out if the company is able to not be insolvent and hopefully their assets cover their liabilities. This metric theoretically says, hey, if they were to liquidate all of their assets, how much money would they have left to pay off their liabilities? Obviously, you want this number to be positive as well as consistently increasing year over year. And currently, guys, they're at $17.8 billion. And within the past 5 years, they've been increasing this as well, looking really, really nice. Average total assets, it's around $21.6 billion. Average liabilities around $7.6 billion. And doing this difference, we get $14 billion. Overall, guys, it's looking really, really good. I'm actually going to give this a fairly high grade of, well, essentially perfect. This doesn't get any better. Year over year has been increasing and they have been positive. So it is what it is. I'm going to give it 100%. But just because the assets can't cover their liabilities doesn't mean that the company is able to cover their liabilities. As I said, cash flow is used to pay down their debts. So doing the exact same math for the cash flow minus the liabilities, this tells us what their cash flow is actually able to subsidize with their liabilities. Now, usually what I find, guys, is that this number is usually in the negatives, but I'm going to look for if maybe hopefully the company is increasing their cash flow and lowering their liabilities, making this negative number closer and closer to zero, or if not in the positive. And currently, guys, as of last year, they're at negative $5 billion. And this is actually increasing closer and closer to zero. From the 5 year ago, it was $7.14 billion. Now, obviously on the 5 year, this is looking good, but you can see right here, 4 years ago, they were at $4.8 billion. And then they increased it to $5.3 billion. And then during COVID, they increased it again to around $6 billion or so. So unfortunately, sure, they are able to, get this closer and closer to zero, but, they were a lot closer 4 years ago. It's understandable as to why they did it 2 years ago, but not so much 3 years ago. But then again, we have been seeing that outlier of 3 years ago ever since. So as an overall grade, I'm actually going to give this, guys, honestly, at around 80%. mainly because of the fact that they are at least trying to get this number closer and closer to zero, right? Less negative. But from 4 years ago to 3 years ago, they were actually getting more and more in the negative. So it's kind of a 50-50 there. I think it's looking good. They're at least trying. That's why I'm essentially giving it an 80%. And now looking at the shares outstanding, the metric that companies tend to fail, even mega caps, right? Not saying that Activision is a mega cap, but even mega caps, guys, tend to fail this metric because companies that issue shares, well, are diluting you as the investor. You don't want this. And even companies that pay out the dividends sometimes do this, and it's really, really bad. You want a company to be buying back shares because overall, if you're issuing a dividend and you're buying back shares, that's a dividend that you no longer have to pay, right? So that's good. It lowers your payout ratio. And on top of that, it gives the investor a bigger piece of the company that they currently hold. Now, Activision is actually failing this. Not by a huge amount, but they are still failing this. Pretty much consistently increasing their shares from 5 years ago of 757.5 million shares to today, guys, of 781.6 million shares. There is an increase of 3.18% on the 5-year and 0.32% on the previous year to the current year. This is looking at 1 year ago to today, about 1/3%. Now, you guys are probably looking at this and it's just like, that's an increase. But the way that I see it is, maybe they just figured that the share price was overpriced. So they're like, instead of taking on debt, let's just issue shares, right? So 3%, I get that it is an increase nonetheless, right? But that might be the reason why. So overall, guys, I'm actually going to give this, unfortunately, at around a 65%, just because they are increasing it, but I understand as to why they're doing it. And now looking at the cash and equivalents, they currently have around almost $11 billion. That's absolutely insane, with an average cash of $7.5 billion. And now, guys, that we have actually inputted all of these grades for every single metric, let's actually see what the total is. You can see right here, for the net income, we actually gave it a 75%, free cash flow 70%, revenue 75%, total assets and total liabilities 100%. That was beautiful. Cash flow minus liabilities 80%, and unfortunately shares outstanding 65%. As a total, guys, this actually comes out to be 75% for their fundamentals. Not too bad. Could be a little bit better, but not too bad. Honestly, if they were to just make this shares outstanding a little bit better in the positives, I would personally put this at around like a 70 or 75%. That is essentially, guys, my grade when it comes to this company's fundamentals. And now let's come over here to do some assumptions, low, medium, high, using 3 different factors. As always, revenue growth, projected share buyback, and of course, the required rate of return, which I like to keep flat at 10%. So guys, for the revenue growth, let's look at Seeking Alpha's growth tab. As you can see, the revenue growth year over year, guys, is a negative 3.23%, but the revenue growth forward is 3.81%. Very, very drastic, right? Pretty much the same percent, just in opposite direction. Now, I personally don't believe that they'll go negative in revenue, but my job as an investor is to be conservative when it comes to these assumptions, and I'm going to take into account the forward one because that is mainly with analyst estimates. So seeing that they're estimated around 3%, 4%, for the low assumption, let's go with 2% increase in their revenue. Median assumption, let's say 3%, and for the highest assumption, let's say 4%. Essentially, between the median and high assumption is what the analysts are saying. So I'm just going to go with 3 and 4 for the median and high assumption. Now for the projected share buyback, guys, they are issuing shares, unfortunately, but they aren't issuing shares at a huge amount. So I'm going to say for the low assumption that they'll continue to issue shares at even higher amounts at negative 4%. Negative just means that they're issuing shares, so obviously the more they're issuing shares, that will be the lowest assumption. For the median assumption, let's say negative 3, which is about what they're doing right now. And for the high assumption, let's say negative 2, which is the rosiest assumption. Now, with all this, guys, we actually get some target share prices. Not adjusting for debt, for the low assumption of $72.79, median assumption $76.15, and the highest assumption of $79.64. Now we need to adjust for debt, and in doing so, we actually get the target share prices after debt. We take a look at the net debt, we add the cash and equivalents, and clearly if they have more cash than debt, then this value comes up, and if they have more debt than cash, then this value comes down. So you can see it does come up, guys, by a pretty big amount, right? But if we actually take a look at their net debt, we can actually see that their net debt currently, it is at negative $7.5 billion. So So that's essentially the reason as to why these values are coming up this high. So for the low assumption, now we get around $159. Median assumption, it is almost $166. And the high assumption, we get a little bit more than $173. Now adding a margin of safety of 5, 10, and 15%, this puts me between the buy ranges of around $135.20 to $151.11 for the low assumption, $141 to $157.62 for the median assumption, and $147.08 to $164.38 for the highest assumption. Guys, the current share price is $79.95, essentially $80. So based off of the target share prices, adjusting for debt, this is looking like an all-out buy right now. However, let's take a look at the target share prices not adjusting for debt. We can see that, well, it's fairly close, guys, to the median and high assumption, even the highest one, right? So if you believe that this company will grow at 4% and buy back shares at -2% in the next couple years, assuming that Microsoft buys it, if Microsoft buys it, then pretty much all of this could just be forgotten about, because you're essentially getting $69 billion for what you're paying right now of $62 billion for the company. But assuming that they don't buy it back, and you believe my assumptions, then this will essentially be what you're getting. Now guys, if you believe my assumptions, this is not financial advice, and every investment is the present value of all future cash flow. That's why I highly suggest you guys get this calculator. I have it available for free. Anybody can have it. I have this one, the book value one, as well as my reevaluation, and on top of that, guys, a dividend tracking sheet for companies that pay out the dividends, or if you just want companies that don't pay out the dividend, you just want to see your capital gains, right? I have all this for free. All I'm asking for in return, guys, is like, subscribe, comment. Really does help me with the algorithm on YouTube. Thank you so much for everybody who have subscribed. I really can't be any more grateful, guys. I love making this type of content. I love giving you guys free stuff, and hopefully we can get to 1,000 subscribers, and I hope to do something really, really cool at 1,000. So if you guys can help me get there by hitting that subscribe button, it's free, hitting that like, as well as commenting and telling your friends if they want to learn how to invest using a fundamental process, please lead them to my channel. I greatly appreciate it. But now let's actually take a look at this dividend, because, well, with 47 cents per share annually, well, let's just entertain the fact that you may actually want to buy this company for its dividend. So let's say that you make the average US income $68,703. We bring this to the monthly $5,725. If you were to put in 1 month's income into this company at the current share price, guys, this would net you $33.60 annually, $8.41 quarterly, and $2.80 monthly. Yeah, it's not the best dividend paying company, guys, right? Absolutely not. So there are better ones out there. I'm not saying this is a bad company, but overall there are better dividend paying companies out there, especially if you're looking for dividends to subsidize your basic expenses. All in all, guys, Activision is a company that, I mean, I like playing their games. I like playing Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Spyro is awesome, right? But as it stands, it really just depends as to what you think, right? If you think this company will get bought out by Microsoft and you're buying it right now for $62 billion, well, Microsoft will essentially pay you the difference to give them your shares, right? That's actually not too shabby. But if the deal doesn't go through, then you may want to further take a look at these fundamentals and make your own assumption. But that pretty much does it for this video. If you like, comment, subscribe. It really does help with the algorithm on YouTube, as I said. You guys can follow me on my new tech sites, link in the description below. So with that said, peace out, and I will see you all in the next stock analysis video.